My advice is always that every message you send, every text message, every call, everything, just assume you're in front of the judge, and you won't get yourself in trouble that way.
Absolutely.
What is going on, everyone? It is Mark Reel Jr., the Father's Rights Attorney, and you are listening to another episode of the Father's Rights Playbook. On today's episode, I have Real Father's Rights Attorney Grant McArthur, and we are going to talk about communicating with your ex. All right, Grant, this is probably the subject or the area that we have the most issues with our clients, is communicating with their ex. And we understand it's very challenging. You obviously have broken up with this person, you're getting divorced, you've separated, whatever it may be, for a reason. So when a guy comes to you and we're having that strategy call and we're talking through things, let's start out with, what are your first couple pieces of advice around communicating with your ex?
I think the thing that most fathers, including myself, I think anybody who's gone through the process understands, is that once you realize this, you realize that you need to kind of stop talking as much and figure out a way to slow the conversation down and put it into a medium.
I got one of those. You want to know my rule number one is?
What's that?
Just shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
When in doubt, shut the fuck up. Like, that is, if all men did that.
Honestly. Well, and you want to say something, and a lot of times the issue is that they're, our exes are masters at getting a response from us. Usually, I think, because a lot of these guys still care. They want to still make sure that there's a soft landing for mom. They want to make sure that mom's taken care of, or they want to respond to something that's just flatly untrue.
Here's the deal. Men are protectors. They're leaders of your family. And we see this in family court where a lot of women get ahead is women are not afraid to just end men. And
absolutely.
ruin life. While men, by nature, are still protecting that ex.
Well, and I think a lot of these guys feel that, I'm being fair here, so the court's going to see that.
Yeah.
The court isn't going to see that. The court generally doesn't see anything that happened before you walk through those doors, and whatever is in front of them as far as the filings and the outcomes, that's all that happened. Because most of these moms, whether a guy understands this or not at the beginning, are going to say it never happened. This guy never provided me with what he's saying. He's never been nice like this. I want everything. So it doesn't matter how nice you've been. None of that really matters. So I tell my clients a lot of times when they're asking, what can I do to be nice to mom? Should I do this for her? And I tell them, we're not going to do anything outside of what the court requires for you to do. And then we think about what that is. Sometimes there are things you can do that meet those requirements before the court orders it, but they're going to happen anyway. Yeah. And that's pretty much all you want to do, because a lot of these guys tend to come into kind of agreements where they're providing mom with agreements on things that we want to hold as bargaining chips when we're down the road.
You think she's going to play fair,
right? Because
you've been playing ball with her. And then she turns around, I haven't gotten anything. He never gave me that cash.
Right, exactly.
Look at these. I mean, I think, and staying on the topic of the communication piece, it's like, this is a person who probably knows how to push your buttons.
Right, exactly.
They know where every single button is. They know that name they can call you. They know that story they can allude to. They know what they can subtly push on you. And to be honest with you, and I'm not even going to say in my opinion, it's men and their communication is treated different than women in their communication. Women can get away with more.
Oh, absolutely.
We don't see, men don't get mean text restraining orders granted against their ex.
Right.
The woman gets those granted against the man. And so I always we talk about the Miranda rights, anything you say can and will be used against you. Well, you might as well read that to yourself in family law. My advice is always that every message you send, every text message, every call, everything, just assume you're in front of the judge, and you won't get yourself in trouble that way.
Absolutely. Well, and I think the difficulty is, and I've thought about this, is how do you slow that down? So there comes a point in time where they make orders about, how you're going to communicate. A lot of times I tell my clients, there's an app. For example, there's Talking Parents.
Let's talk through that. Yeah. So what would you say? Probably 75 to 85% of custody orders have an order that dictates what medium you can communicate on.
Right.
Unless you guys are on fantastic terms, at least in Southern California, it's heavy preference to Talking Parents.
Right.
Our Family Wizard, there's a few others out there.
There are a couple others.
So what do these apps achieve?
Well, I think what it achieves is if you're dealing with somebody who's high conflict, on their end, nobody likes to have their phone buzzing all day with text messages from an ex. Who's,
so easy to respond right then and there.
It's way too easy. And before you even respond, they're responding to you to push that next button.
Yeah.
And so what I tell my clients is get onto one of these applications. Everything's saved in the cloud in a database that these judges see all the time. So they're easy exhibits.
Marks when it was sent.
Right.
It marks when it was viewed.
The subject matter.
Yeah, and it's something that can technically, really, under any evidence, any standard that the judge wants to apply in evidence in family court, can be admitted.
Absolutely. And I think what it does for the client is at that point you have an email set up. So you get an email notification and you review it. If it's not something that immediately needs to be responded to, like a health and safety issue regarding your child, you bite your lip, you close your email that told you that you just got a notification, and maybe she sends 5 more. But that evening, you set a time, maybe 6:30, 7. I generally prefer to talk to my ex at about 7:30, and you provide one response that hits the things that are important.
And most orders,
that is it.
Most orders, when there's any sort of issue, it's viewed as reasonable if you respond within 24 hours.
Right.
So just because you see that email notification, and I don't even recommend in most cases. There are some instances where it makes sense to pay, where you can have the app and you can have it on your phone. But when you get Talking Parents or Our Family Wizard or one of these apps, what it does is it separates you from your normal day-to-day communication.
Right,
Text
exactly.
messages are easy. My phone's went off twice since we've been sitting here filming, and all I have to do is pick it up and respond. When you're inside the app, you get an email notification. Now you got to go log in. You got to
Right.
click through a couple screens. You got to go to the conversation, and you got to read it. That doesn't mean you have to respond right then and there.
Exactly. Well, and I think it's even more reasonable because the court's looking at this and they know it's an email. And they know that generally you're going to take more time to respond to that. And I think the mistake a lot of guys make is they allow the mother to control the narrative. Basically, before you even respond, they're shooting a new text. And you're responding to things that you might not have if you took the time to just kind of sit there and let it all percolate and you think about it before you provide that response.
I mean, I've even seen where guys will create a new email address for their Talking Parents account. And it's like, hey, you got a 7:30 alarm on your phone. It goes off. You go ahead. You flip over to that email account. You see you got a message. You log in. You read it. And if there is a message that day, then you don't respond until the next day. Like I said, I think that a lot of guys get in trouble with the quick emotional responses. And then she's going to run in and say, you're dangerous, you're unstable, you're angry. It will be used against you.
And you never know how the court responds, because I think in most cases, I always use this analogy. If my kids are poking a cat with a stick, who's going to be in trouble when the cat, scratches them? I'd tell my kids to knock it off, right?
Yeah.
In court, there's no guarantee that the judge isn't going to punish the cat. And it makes no sense.
Or the judge is going to see that's what happened.
Right. Right. Or, yeah, exactly, that they see that you've been poked. So it absolutely is very important that if you're dealing with a high conflict ex, that you slow your communication down. If that means going onto a court-approved app, go onto a court-approved app. If that means tell her that we're only talking about this through email, I'm not picking up my phone anymore, talk about it through an email. Do something to kind of slow that conversation down.
And here's a piece, I think, a mistake. I think more women do this than men. I always advise, like, we get you over in one of these apps, or you say we're communicating via email or whatever that may be, but do not block your ex.
Right.
That is a mistake, because if they need to get a hold of you in an emergency, something happens, something's going on, now they cannot. But if the judge sees they've called you 41 times in a 24-hour span, and you sent them an email saying, hey, let's communicate here in writing, you're going to get a judge that's going to be more likely to side with you being reasonable.
Right, exactly. I think that's the baseline in any courtroom, is the reasonable party, the one that's being cool and responsible. That's the party that wins. So.
Yeah. So in short, rule number 1 is, when in doubt, shut the fuck up. You don't have to respond to anything. And it's really challenging because she's going to make allegations.
Oh, it's impossible sometimes, it feels like.
Number 2 is take a deep breath. You don't have to respond immediately. Taking 24 hours to respond is viewed as reasonable by any judge. Now, if she sends you a text or she calls you and your kid's in the ER and 24 hours later you message back for an update, we got an issue. But 99% of things are not emergencies, and if you respond the next day, you are perfectly in the clear.
Absolutely.
And the last piece I think we covered was just treat every piece of communication like the judge is going to see it, because best bet, whether it be phone, whether it be text, whether it be email, she is keeping receipts.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Grant. For the dads out here that are watching and listening, I hope you got a lot of value out of this episode. I'm Mark Real Jr., and we will see you on the next episode of the Father's Rights Playbook.